So good evening and welcome everybody to the City of Lake Forest Park City Council work session for Thursday, July 9th, 2026. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd entertain a motion for adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Paul and I had discussed tabling topic A until our next session.
Okay.
The committee's not ready yet. We have a write-up that we've done, but the committee members haven't had a chance to review it flexibly.
Fair enough.
Maybe touch on one item. I don't know if we want to have our attorney just kind of cover anything that she had sent out, just to kind of make sure that you're all on the same page as far as what you can and can't talk about. But one thing I wanted to bring up too, and I didn't about it yesterday when we were meeting, is as part of your plan, coffee with the council is still something that could be part of your plan. Doesn't mean you're going to talk levy, but to be able to put yourself out there for the public to ask you any question. And then if it came up, to address the facts of the levy, but it just gives them an opportunity to talk to you about anything. I think our Deputy Mayor here, Tani, and Councilmember Riddle brought this up in these events they've gone to. It's been more about other things, but so just something I wanted to get.
Okay.
Okay, or to keep it on there, or just.
Yeah, make sure we stay within the motion on the table. Kim, did you have anything to add to that, or are we?
I was just here to answer any questions on that
Okay.
topic if they came up.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm still happy to do that if that works for you guys. Otherwise, I'll see you at 7.
Yeah. Council, what's your pleasure? So, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda, but would like someone like to motion to.
Okay, I'm not really sure what the motion is, so, I mean, I know you want to table A till next time.
Yes.
but, what about, the attorney?
No, I think you could go ahead and adopt the agenda, then move to table item A.
Okay, or go that direction. Okay, you got that. All right. Any other questions or concerns? All those in favor of adoption of the agenda, please say aye.
Hi.
Any nays? Guys have it. Thank you, everybody. And then to motion.
Motion to table agenda item 3A until next session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns?
I think it would, I think it'd be good to still have the conversation on the coffee with the council and understand that a little better, so we can roll some more of those out. And if there's any feedback from our city attorney on what we need to be cautious of. That's just like a short conversation. So I would not support the motion.
You're not supporting the motion. Okay. Well, let's stay with the motion. Anybody else have comments on the motion before? Hearing none, all those in favor of tabling item A, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Great. And Muhlenberg, Saunders, and good. And the nays are any nays?
Nay.
One nay.
Present.
Present. Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you, council. We'll be moving this to another section. I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness on this. Okay, well, let's jump into the budget calendar then. Item B, budget calendar for the 2027-2028 biennium budget.
That's what
If you have the
That's-
lead, I'm
that's-
sorry, sir. Yeah, thank you very much for all.
I put your hat on
Wearing
at your finance.
3 hats
director.
right now. Yeah,
Three,
just 2, that's right.
somebody else good I don't know about. I saw Diego recently.
Yeah.
Let's see her. Yeah, yeah, no, they won't let me carry it. This is gonna be a short meeting, so, this is really just to get this on your radar. I wanted to point out some notes that I put on here. We put this together every year, for the budget cycle. Just lay out all the meetings so you know what to expect, when to expect it, to make sure that you're at those important meetings. And then we do have a placeholder on November 19th, as additional final adoption date if needed. That was before somebody said they were leaving the city, so I anticipate that's gonna be needed. As we are still in the very early throes of looking for a new finance director. Some of the things that are on here have already taken place. So back in May, we put out a call for department budget requests. Those were due by the end of June. There are a few stragglers, but they're getting there. And in the meantime, we'll work to, as it says, discuss draft budget calendar. That's where we are tonight. Community partners, that's tonight as well, to start that process. And then everything else on here is future coming up. Reviewing, the mayor and I will review department proposals together. Usually that would include the finance director, but just two of us this year. And based off of what we hear from department directors, whatever support staff they bring, determines what we put into the mayor's budget. And that's based off of, you'll see several steps further down on 13. We'll be presenting to council revenue expenditure fiscal year projections. Those roll into the budget, so we know how much money we anticipate in revenues coming in through the end of the year, and that projection is getting close to complete. Lindsay is working from up in Snohomish County for us evenings and weekends to help us with the revenues. I'm working with Trish, our financial manager, and the staff, department directors, as they put together how they think they'll expend the end of the year, and then that will the budget on what dollars are going to roll forward, how much reliance we would need to have on our savings if the levy shouldn't pass. And I was asked the question yesterday, how will the budget be put together? Because it's ahead of a levy vote, it will be put together using savings, not anticipating a levy. And then if it were to pass, then we would pivot in early November and just change out how the revenue flows. So you wouldn't see that big drop in your unallocated reserves. All right, that's a little more detail I meant to get in tonight, but just kind of give you a heads up before we're headed. The goal, so there's a few things on the 23rd I'm available. Finance director is going to fill in for me, but you'll have several department directors there on the 23rd. It's a pretty light meeting, and it's just community partners presenting, nothing budget wise. 13th I'll be remote, but I'll be at the meeting. And then the tentative FD on September 10th, that's when we anticipate presenting the mayor's budget to council. That will depend on how this process goes without finance director and chair. So that will make flex a little bit. We are way ahead of where most cities are. Like I was looking at MRSC and their best practices, and it's like, yeah, mayor's budget goes to council or city manager's budget goes to council in October.
Yeah.
Late October, and then in November you make decisions, and then do budget process, and in December you adopt your budget. We don't like to press it that much. We know that our community likes to get involved. Transparency, they like to see meetings occur, so we start much earlier. And so it does give us flexibility. Yeah, the only key components is that by the end of November, we have to adopt, whether the levy passes that levy rate, or if it doesn't pass, like last year, the 1% increase in the levy, and get that to the county before the end of November. The rest can come in through December to meet the deadlines of the binding budget. And then there's one remote. These are just conferences that I need to do. So this I'm just putting out tonight for your review. We will touch this. I just have a budget finance meeting next week. I'll back you on that. This will be one of the items. Yeah, there should be the dashboards if the staff put those together. But just take this home, take a look at it. If you have problems with dates, you'd like to see some things change, just let me know. Talk about that.
Just to highlight, it looks like we've got 4 special meetings. So check your calendars for those added meetings and the potential 5th special meeting if we need to go till late November.
And if we have to go later, then schedule some things in December as well. One thing to point out on the meetings that were canceled, the budget and finance meeting I had originally planned on having, it was getting kind of late in the month. I guess like take the last couple of weeks off. It also turned out that Director Keaton is going to be out of town, and we were going to CIP that night. So we've kind of doubled up on the night of the 10th to bring the CIP during the session. So that's a special
We'll do the
portion
truncated
of that. Yeah.
budget financing.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Just a couple of contextual historical comments about the budget calendar from history. sometimes previously, the budget season would start late and would go sometimes into Thanksgiving. People all heard about the old favorite meeting the day after Thanksgiving, it had to be called. Many years ago, and it even had to go very close to Christmas, one year. And when leadership changed in budget and finance, including my role in that, we decided we were not going to compress things into basically one quarter and make sure that we had enough time to process what was going on, give people a chance to get up to speed, particularly the council members, because it's a huge lift to plow through a biennial budget. And it's worked, I think, very effectively. So it's just to let you know, it's expanded the process, so it is a bigger lift for the staff, but it also gives staff more time to prepare as well as all the rest of us. So just a little historical context, because as Administrator Bill said, I saw the same piece, Phil, that a lot of cities started in October. And that terrifies me. So
Well, it turns out that Lake Stevens hasn't even started theirs yet, so they're already there, so.
Deputy for Tony.
So I'm just looking at the 12th of November meeting. Why is that a special meeting? Don't we normally meet on the second Thursday?
That could just be a text holdover,
Okay,
that could just be an error.
so
Call
there,
that a script.
It's not Veterans Day.
Let's see.
okay, so to be absolutely clear, there are 4 special meetings then.
Yeah, November 12th would not be a
Okay,
special meeting.
yeah, that would
so
be
I
a-
will fix that.
So not counting the 19th of November, then there are 4 special meetings. There's the special budget and finance on the 10th of September. There's the 24th of September. Special work session, I guess, okay. And then a special meeting on the 28th, which is a Monday, which makes sense. And then 1st of October, special work session. And yeah. So those are the ones that we have to clear our calendars for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you absolutely can't clear it, then there was consensus of a different date. But this tries to hold true to what we do every year, and this is boilerplate, and the words didn't get changed on the 12th.
Okay, that's fair.
If you've got an early packet, you saw that I PDF'd every past budget calendar to Matt and he had catchment on it, so if you have an early packet, you'll see previous years.
If anybody has any glaring concerns about some of these dates, but we have enough time right now, bring it up. Let's move on.
Yeah, first apologies for being late. This is really just wordsmithing. The fact that there's a lot of lines that say open to the public implies that there's some of our meetings that are not open to the public, which is not the case, so. You can probably just delete all of those and just on the header row, just say all meetings open to the public.
Yeah, we had this on there last biennium, and I don't remember exactly why.
Some of the meetings-
Some of them are
They're
just
private with administration.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that would call out,
But they're called, those are called out.
okay. I hear
And
you.
those are just two, right? Are presentations to the administration.
And for those, it says NA for meeting type.
Yeah.
So anytime, any council meeting, work session, committee.
Of course, they're always. I will fix that.
Well,
4th one.
questions, comments? Mr. Hill.
And just because I'm going to be gone in early September, Zoom's still an option, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like those that I say I'll be remote, yeah.
Right, okay. So if you can be remote, I can remote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question, budget amendment coming this summer? For this budget?
The next one would be in November, December. We won't do another, mention the
Okay,
the one that she just finished on her last evening was the last one you'll see until we true up before the.
okay, so it won't be conflicting with this
Yeah.
conversations.
Right.
Thank you. Hoping you'd see that.
Yeah, we don't need to add one more thing.
Alex. Additional questions, comments?
Do you- I was just gonna say, do we want to list the November election date on here, so we can keep that in mind?
I don't, so I think
Okay.
that makes messages, so.
Just as
We've never done it before.
no, and as general reminder, we are being agnostic about levy. However, budget is what it is. We're being very cautious about where we need to go. Everyone is keeping in mind contingencies, whatever happens in the future. So, regardless of levy or not. And I think this process will help highlight the strengths and weaknesses of our budget and what we have to address.
So just looking at the in case part, in December then, we have the 10th, which is our regular business meeting day. We have the 17th, which would be our regular big budget and finance committee day. And then we could potentially have, well, a work session from the 10th. And of course, the cow on the 22nd, which is kind of in Christmas week, but whatever. So the point is that basically, do we need to reserve the 3rd, you think, which is the Thursday, that first Thursday?
I would wait for now.
Okay.
I mean, the goal is to get there.
Okay,
I think we've got enough more with Lindsay helping us. Nights and weekends, and Trish is getting on it. Department directors been good to get all their expenditures and their asks. So it should be pretty
right.
plug and play, so we get to that point.
And if we need to, we can repurpose one of the other meetings then or something.
Yeah, and I would say that we would, look at the 3rd. The 10th, 17th, 14th, trying to stay out of the week that person. So it's very like so that's what we're involved.
Yeah, as I recall, there's a number of additional items, things like sewer rates, permit fees. Are those all encapsulated in the the rates and budget related items? Or are there additional things we'd have to approve in December?
No, they would all be encapsulated. Yeah, your property tax levy, your rates.
That's what we might decide on one.
Yeah, all your rates. And then as far as like fees and things like that, that's tied to, so that the fee schedule is not tied to that November 30 decision deadline. And I don't think we're changing.
I'm sorry, there you go.
Oh, will the budget calendar be published on the website or be available? So
Once it's adopted by council, and I think we've got it scheduled for a final touch. I'll go through and clean up from the comments tonight at budget and finance, and you could adopt it as early as there.
Another question, for some of the newer council members, there's the proviso process. Budget provisos, these are items that are not in the budget itself, but they're sort of conditional. We used it for hiring the climate coordinator. We used it for, what was the trigger for hiring additional court personnel for traffic citations. I think it might be helpful. There's a rough time frame for when council members should be submitting for budget provisos.
That would be anytime after the mayor's budget is transmitted to you. At that point, it becomes your budget. There will likely be items that the mayor and I take out requests and recommend that you do as a proviso. There will also probably be things that you see in there that you think should wait. See, if levy passes, there are also maybe things that aren't in there that you want to see added, might come in as a proviso based on whatever triggers you determine be appropriate at that time to have that kick in. Like Councilmember Golden said, a lot of our proviso stuff we looked at midnight. That was the time where we came back and we looked at climate coordinator. Others has specific, like with the court staff, specific thresholds that the court put in place. And council said, once we hit those levels of say citations coming through, we know the revenue's there, you can go ahead and hire those additional folks. So yeah. you have things that you're gonna wanna talk to your colleagues about, I would have those lists so that once it's transmitted to the mayor says transmitted to you, so having those discussions.
As I may be misremembering this because I was watching it from the outside last year and the year before. Is that the mechanism, or is there a different mechanism of essentially just the inherent uncertainty in all of this, of things that are sort of, if we can get to it, if it is feasible a year into in the mid-biennial adjustment, a sort of essentially a sort of parking list or wait list of,
Yeah, I mean, this.
is that the proviso
Yeah, that's
process, or
the
is that,
proviso
is there
process.
something separate?
No, that's it.
Yeah.
And you can have discussions of, maybe you don't want to provide, so maybe you want something in the budget and you want to spend. Unallocated reserves to pay for it, that would be a discussion that you have once the mayor's budget is transmitted. If there was a consensus, that would occur. If there was not, maybe the secondary would be then put in proviso and put some caveats of if these things happen, then we explore adding this in, and you could say at the mid-buy or at some measure.
Should we vote on that with the budget, which makes that then when those triggers happen, administration's already been, directed to make the changes. If there's something that we're not all in agreement on, doesn't mean we still can't consider it at the mid-buy, but it just wouldn't be automatic when the triggers are reached.
Colleagues, other questions? So proviso process probably sometime in September, if you have ideas of what to think about there. There's other kind of milestones to date wise later in the process that would trigger that process. I would offer that we've had one time, I believe, a number of years ago, where there was pretty onerous list of provisos, and it became very difficult to manage because of if-thens. There were a whole lot of them, and so that process is really for a discrete number of elements to avoid having to revisit a larger process in the future. That means it's clear as mud.
Absolutely.
Okay. What we were just saying is basically go ahead and propose as a change to the budget as opposed to make the price.
Exactly. That's the better path. However, it's contingent, you can have contingencies, to the process, which I think is a pretty powerful way to do certain things.
And presumably, something that's adopted as part of the budget in the new year could come back out if it sort of the inverse of that process, rather than making it conditional, we could reevaluate sometime later. Is that also true, or is that? I want to be sure I'm thinking about it clearly.
Are you saying
If-
if you put something in anticipating the levy passing into it, or are you anticipating?
Or if in a broader reexamination that happens, then it no longer seems realistic to pursue. It feels like that's more of a proviso, but to your point about not overburdening the proviso
I
process.
think an example would be that there's dollars allocated for the, there's a grant received and staff was gonna go for it with the electric vehicle charging. And as we dug into that, found out that City Hall couldn't support that, then we had that discussion, council approved, repurposed the dollars for the study that provided incentives is the one. So yeah, there are times you put something in the budget, and you find out later that that's the best thing to do. Yeah, you can make some amendments later on to pull stuff out.
Yeah, I think that's just to bring it to a new discussion and
Yeah.
council makes a new vote. For things that are squishy like that, if it's a firm item, then the proviso process is something we do.
Any other questions or comments on the budget calendar, colleagues? So check your calendars. Let's try to basically you can send in your concerns to Mr. Hill, your conflicts to complain, we can aggregate them in anticipation of adoption publication after the 23rd of this month, so we can get things rolling. Sooner is better than later, so it would be great because it's a lot of moving pieces for a lot of different schedules talked about. like 18 people. 7 of you as part of that group, of course. Anything else? We have nothing else on the agenda. Councilmember Saunders, I wanted to check and make sure there was. You're good? Okay. All right. We're, you don't see strange people outside your window right now, so I think you're. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, we're adjourned until 7 p.m. up in the council chambers to hear from community partners. Give yourselves a chance to catch a bite to eat or a cup of coffee. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.